Welcome to my channel. Please support by subscribing, liking, and sharing this story. Thank you. Your support means the world to us. The house was finally quiet. The sound of laughter, clinking glasses, and soft music had faded into memory. Only a few candles still flickered on the dining table, their glow dancing over empty plates and half-finished glasses of wine. Emily stood in the kitchen, hands resting on the counter, staring out the window at the falling snow. It had been a long night. Friends, neighbors, and family had gathered to celebrate her 40th birthday, the first one without her husband, Daniel. He hadn't passed away or vanished. He had simply left. 2 years ago, one quiet morning, he had told her he needed to find himself, and walked out the door. Since then, Emily had tried to be strong. She raised her son, Noah, now 17, with a quiet determination. She smiled when she needed to, laughed when she didn't feel like it, and built a life that looked fine from the outside. But tonight, after everyone had gone, that fragile strength began to crumble. She sighed deeply, brushing a strand of blonde hair from her face, and whispered, "Happy birthday, Emily," to herself, a touch of sarcasm in her voice. The silence after her words felt heavier than she expected. Then she heard a soft knock. It was Noah. He stood in the doorway, tall and thoughtful, with the same hazel eyes as his father but a gentler presence. "Mom, everyone's gone," he said softly. "I know." She smiled faintly. "Thanks for helping tonight. You were amazing." He stepped closer. "You okay?" Emily nodded quickly. Too quickly. "Of course. Just tired." Noah didn't believe her. He'd watched her all evening, laughing for everyone else. But he'd seen the way she kept glancing toward the door, as if expecting someone who never came. He knew his mother too well. "Mom," he said again, his voice low, steady, "you don't have to pretend when it's just me." She looked at him then, really looked at him. For a moment, she saw not a boy but a young man, someone who'd grown up faster than he should have. Her eyes softened. "I'm not pretending," she said quietly. "I'm just remembering." He took a breath, hesitating, as if deciding whether to speak or not. Then he said something that caught her completely off guard. "Mom, can I tell you something? Something I've never said before." Emily straightened, surprised by the seriousness in his tone. "Of course." Noah walked to the table and sat down, his fingers tracing the rim of a glass. "I used to blame you," he began. Her heart skipped a beat. He didn't look up. "When Dad left, I thought maybe it was because of you. I thought you pushed him away, or didn't try hard enough. I was so angry. I didn't understand what you were going through." Emily froze. For a moment, she didn't know how to breathe. She had spent 2 years worrying about what her son thought, afraid he resented her, afraid that she had somehow broken the family beyond repair. Hearing him say those words felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. She wanted to speak, but before she could, Noah continued. "But tonight," he said, finally looking up, "watching you, how you smiled, how you made everyone feel at home even though I know you were hurting, I realized something. You never gave up. You never stopped caring. You didn't let what he did define you. You've been everything, even when he wasn't." Emily's eyes filled before she could stop the tears. "Noah," she whispered. He stood up, walked over, and wrapped his arms around her. For a long moment, they just stayed there, mother and son, holding on to each other in the quiet kitchen, surrounded by the fading warmth of the evening. Noah's voice was soft, steady. "You taught me what love really looks like. It's not perfect, and it's not always easy, but it's real. And someday, when I meet someone, I'll know how to love her because of you." Her tears finally fell, one after another. She hadn't expected that. Not from her teenage son, not tonight, not when she felt so empty. It was as if the weight she'd been carrying for years began to lift, slowly, gently, piece by piece. "You don't know how much that means to me," she whispered. Noah smiled faintly. "I do now." Then, after a pause, he added something else, something that would change the direction of both their lives. "Mom, there's someone I think you should talk to." Emily blinked, confused. "Talk to?" He nodded, his tone careful. "It's someone who's been asking about you for a while. Someone who regrets leaving." Her heart stopped. "Noah, are you saying?" He nodded again, eyes filled with something between hope and hesitation. "Dad called me last week. He wants to see you." Emily's hand trembled as she reached for the counter to steady herself. "He what?" "He said he made a mistake. That he never stopped caring. He asked me if I thought you'd ever forgive him." The room suddenly felt smaller, her heart pounding against her chest. All the years of silence, all the pain, all the unanswered questions, they came rushing back in an instant. She could barely whisper. "And what did you say?" Noah hesitated, meeting her eyes. I told him I don't know, but that I'd tell you when the time was right. The clock ticked softly in the background. Outside, the snow fell thicker, the world turning white and quiet. Emily looked at her son, the same boy who'd once blamed her, who now stood there giving her something she hadn't felt in years, a second chance. Her lips parted, but no words came out. And just then, Noah said, almost in a whisper, "He's waiting outside." Emily's breath caught. Outside. Noah nodded. He said he didn't want to come in unless you wanted him to. The air felt charged, the kind of stillness that comes before something life-changing. Emily turned toward the window, where the faint glow of headlights shimmered through the snow. Her heart raced a mix of fear, anger, and something she hadn't dared feel in years. Hope. The wind howled softly outside as Emily stood frozen by the window. Through the frost-specked glass, she could see the faint beam of headlights reflecting off the falling snow. Her pulse quickened, each beat echoing like a drum in her chest. Daniel. The name alone stirred up years of buried emotions, love, anger, confusion, heartbreak. She had dreamed of this moment once, countless times in the sleepless nights that followed his leaving, but in every version she'd imagined, she had control. She had the perfect words ready, the perfect calm expression. But now, facing the possibility that he was just a few feet away, her hands trembled. Noah watched her carefully. You don't have to see him if you're not ready, he said softly. I'll tell him to leave. Emily swallowed hard, her throat tight. No, she whispered. If he came all this way, I need to know why. She reached for her sweater, wrapping it around her shoulders as if it could guard her from the storm inside her chest. When she stepped outside, the cold air stung her cheeks. The snow crunched beneath her boots as she walked down the front steps, every breath visible in the winter air. Daniel was leaning against his old truck, the same one he'd driven away in 2 years ago. His hair was a little grayer now, his posture less certain. When he saw her, he straightened, his eyes glimmering under the porch light. Hi, Em, he said, his voice quiet, cautious. Emily's breath hitched. She hadn't heard that voice in so long, yet it felt instantly familiar, too familiar. She didn't respond at first. She just looked at him, searching for something in his face. Regret, love, a reason. He took a slow step closer. You look good, he said awkwardly. She gave a short laugh, though it came out sharper than she meant. That's what you start with, after everything. Daniel's shoulders dropped. I know I don't deserve a kind word from you, he admitted, but I didn't come here to pretend. I came because I can't keep living with what I did. Emily crossed her arms, trying to steady her voice. What did you do, Daniel? You left. You said you needed space. Then you disappeared. No calls, no letters, nothing. You left me to explain to our son why his father wasn't coming home. He nodded slowly, his eyes glistening. And I've hated myself for it every day since. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The snow fell heavier now, covering the driveway like a fresh sheet of white, as if the world itself was trying to offer them a clean slate. Daniel's voice broke the silence. When I left, I thought I was running from unhappiness. But what I really did was run away from love, from you, from Noah, from everything that mattered. I thought I needed to figure out who I was, but all I learned was how empty life feels without you. Emily looked away, blinking back tears. You can't just come back and expect things to go back to the way they were, she said, her voice trembling. I don't, he said softly. I want a chance to say I'm sorry. Not the kind of sorry that fixes everything, but the kind that means I finally understand what I broke. The sincerity in his tone caught her off guard. She wanted to stay angry, to hold on to the bitterness that had protected her for so long. But looking at him now, standing in the cold, his face weary and hopeful, she felt the walls around her heart begin to crack. Do you know what it was like? She whispered. Every morning, waiting for you to walk through that door, pretending I was strong for Noah when I was falling apart inside. Daniel's eyes filled. Yes, because I've lived every day since then wishing I had walked back through that door. A tear slipped down Emily's cheek. She turned away, embarrassed by her own emotions. You don't get to say that now. I know, he said softly, but I'll say it anyway. For a long moment, the two stood in silence, years of pain suspended between them, too heavy for words. Then, the front door creaked open, and Noah stepped onto the porch. He looked from his father to his mother, unsure whether to step closer or stay back. Everything okay? He asked quietly. Emily wiped her tears quickly. It's fine, honey. Go back inside. It's cold. But Noah didn't move. You should both come in, he said gently. You don't have to talk out here. Daniel looked at Emily, waiting for her decision. She hesitated, torn between pride and compassion. Between the past and whatever might come next. Finally, she nodded. Just for a few minutes, she said. Inside the house felt different, quieter, more fragile. Daniel glanced around the living room, taking in the small changes, the new curtains, the framed photos, the candle that still flickered from the party. He paused at a photo on the mantel, the three of them on a beach years ago, arms around each other, laughing. He touched the frame softly. He was so little then, he murmured. Emily followed his gaze. He grew up faster than he should have. Daniel turned to her, his expression full of guilt. Because I wasn't there. Because I had to be, both of us, she corrected gently. He nodded, swallowing hard. You did better than I ever could have. They stood there, the silence thick but no longer hostile. There was a strange peace in the room, fragile, uncertain, but real. And then Daniel said something that made Emily's heart stop all over again. Emily, there's something else you should know. It's about why I left. She frowned. You already told me. He shook his head slowly. Not the whole truth. The air seemed to change heavier, charged. Emily stared at him, her pulse quickening again. What are you talking about? She asked, her voice low. Daniel hesitated, then took a deep breath. I didn't just leave because I was unhappy. I left because I thought I was protecting you. Her brow furrowed. Protecting me? From what? He looked down, then met her eyes with a painful honesty. From something I didn't know how to explain back then, something that might still change everything between us. Emily's breath caught, her voice barely a whisper. Daniel, what are you saying? He took a step closer, eyes shining with emotion. I never stopped loving you, but there's a reason I stayed away, a reason I didn't think I deserved to come back. The air in the room turned still. Even the flickering candle by the window seemed to pause. Emily stood frozen, her heart pounding so loudly she could hear it echo inside her chest. Daniel's voice trembled slightly as he spoke. There's something I never told you, Emily. Something I should have said before I walked away. She crossed her arms, though her knees felt weak. Then say it now. He took a slow breath. A few months before I left, I found out something about myself, about my health. I was diagnosed with a heart condition. The doctors said it wasn't serious at first, but it could get worse if I didn't take it easy. I was scared, not just of dying, but of becoming a burden. Emily blinked, trying to process his words. So you left me because of that? She asked, disbelief mixing with pain. Daniel nodded. I thought I was doing the right thing. I didn't want you to spend years watching me fall apart. I wanted to spare you from that. Her voice cracked. You don't get to decide what I could or couldn't handle. You think disappearing hurt less than losing you slowly would have. Daniel lowered his gaze. I see that now. But back then, I thought leaving was mercy. I didn't realize I was breaking the only person who ever truly loved me. The truth hit Emily like a storm. All the years of unanswered questions, all the sleepless nights wondering why now had an answer. It wasn't another woman. It wasn't because he stopped loving her. It was fear. Noah, who had been listening quietly from the stairs, stepped forward. Dad, why didn't you tell me either? Daniel turned to him, eyes filled with regret. Because I didn't want you to see me as weak. You were just a kid, Noah. I didn't want you to worry. Noah shook his head. You don't protect the people you love by lying to them. Emily's eyes softened, her voice quieter now. So, what happened? You said it could get worse. Did it? Daniel hesitated. For a while, yes. I had surgery last year. It went well. The doctors say I'm fine now, but it changed me. I realized how foolish I'd been. How much time I'd wasted hiding instead of healing with the people who mattered. Emily sat down slowly, pressing a hand to her temple. All these years, I thought I wasn't enough, that I failed you somehow. He moved closer but stopped a few feet away, as if afraid of crossing a fragile boundary. You were always enough. I just wasn't brave enough to be honest with you. The room filled with silence again, not the cold silence of resentment, but one heavy with reflection and unspoken forgiveness. Noah looked between them, sensing something shifting, something fragile and real. Mom, he said softly, maybe this is your chance to let go of the past. You don't have to forget what he did, but maybe you can both stop letting it define you. Emily looked at her son, her wise, steady-hearted boy, and then at Daniel. His face, once so familiar, now seemed older, humbler, more human. Do you know what hurts the most? She said finally. It's not that you left. It's that I never got to tell you that I would have stayed, no matter what. Daniel's eyes filled. I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life wishing I had trusted that. Tears rolled down Emily's cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel everything: the sorrow, the love, the relief of finally knowing the truth. "Daniel," she said softly, "I don't know if I can forgive you. Not yet, but I can see you're not the same man who left." He nodded. "I'm not. I had to lose everything to understand what mattered." A soft knock interrupted them. The wind had blown open the porch door. Daniel stepped over to close it, and when he turned back, his gaze landed on the table where a birthday card sat open. He smiled faintly. "You had people over tonight?" Emily nodded. "Friends, family. It was nice, until everyone left." Daniel's eyes met hers. "And then your son changed your life." A small, genuine smile crossed her lips. "Something like that." Noah chuckled quietly. Breaking the tension for the first time that night, "I just told the truth." Emily turned to him with a look of deep affection. "No. You did more than that. You gave me back a piece of hope I didn't think I'd ever feel again." Daniel's gaze softened. "He's a good man. Emily, you did that." For a brief, quiet moment, the three of them stood together, not as a perfect family, but as people trying to rebuild something fragile and real. Then Daniel's voice dropped, sincere and steady. "Emily, I know I can't erase what I did, but if you'll let me, I'd like to try, even if it's just as a friend. Maybe we could start small. Coffee sometime." Emily hesitated. Part of her wanted to say no to protect herself from more pain, but another part, the one that had learned to forgive life for its disappointments, whispered maybe. "I'll think about it," she said quietly. Daniel nodded, a faint glimmer of hope in his eyes. "That's all I could ever ask for." He turned toward the door, ready to leave, when Noah suddenly said, "Wait." Both parents looked at him. Noah smiled slightly. "It's still Mom's birthday. You can't just leave now." Daniel blinked. "Oh, right." He looked at Emily, uncertain. "May I?" She hesitated, then gave a small nod. Daniel reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, slightly worn, as if it had been carried around for years. He opened it slowly. Inside was a simple silver locket, the one Emily had lost years ago on their anniversary trip. Her eyes widened. "You kept it?" He smiled faintly. "Found it in the glove compartment the day I left. I told myself I'd give it back when I found the courage to come home." The air thickened again, filled with emotion too strong for words. Emily looked down at the locket, then back at him. "You still remember everything, don't you?" He nodded softly. "Every single thing." Her hand trembled as she touched the locket. And then, as if the night had been waiting for this moment, the power flickered, and the room dimmed, leaving only the candlelight between them. Their eyes met, years of pain, love and unspoken longing colliding in a single, silent heartbeat. Outside, the snow fell heavier, blanketing the world in white. Inside, something long frozen inside, Emily began to thaw. The room was bathed in a soft golden glow from the candle flames. Shadows flickered gently across the walls, giving everything a warm, dreamlike haze. Emily held the silver locket in her trembling hand, her fingers brushing over its smooth surface like it was a memory brought back to life. Daniel stood quietly, watching her, not daring to speak, afraid that even one wrong word might shatter the fragile moment between them. "I thought this was gone forever," she whispered, her eyes glistening. "I couldn't throw it away," he said softly. "It reminded me of what I lost." "Of you?" Her heart twisted. "You don't get to say things like that after walking out," she replied, but her voice lacked anger. It carried something else: ache, softness, the weight of years spent holding too much inside. Daniel nodded, accepting the sting in her tone. "You're right, but maybe I can say them now, because I finally understand their meaning." Emily looked down again, thumb tracing the tiny engraved heart on the locket. Inside it was a faded picture, one of her and Daniel, laughing on a windy beach in Maine. She remembered that day. The sun, the salt in the air, the way he'd promised her that no matter where life took them, they'd always find their way back to each other. And yet, here they were, two strangers bound by a history that still lived in every glance. Noah watched quietly from the side, his expression soft, thoughtful. He could feel something changing between his parents. Not a miracle reunion, not yet, but the beginning of understanding. After a long silence, Emily finally spoke. "You know, the hardest part wasn't losing you, it was learning to stop waiting." Daniel's eyes filled. "And yet, somehow, I think you never truly did." She met his gaze, that same familiar gaze she'd once fallen for. "Maybe not," she admitted quietly, "but I also learned to live without needing you." Daniel nodded slowly. "That's what makes you stronger than me." He turned toward the window, watching the snow pile up on the sill. "When I was gone, I used to imagine this, coming home, seeing you again, but every time, I told myself you'd moved on, that someone else had given you what I couldn't. Emily gave a faint smile, shaking her head. No one could replace you, but I stopped looking for someone to fix what broke. I focused on being enough for myself. There was pride in her voice, quiet and steady, and it made Daniel's chest tighten with admiration and regret. You always were enough, he said softly. I was just too blind to see it. The clock on the wall ticked slowly, marking the silence that followed. Noah cleared his throat gently. Maybe it's time for some coffee. Feels like this kind of night, right? Emily blinked, almost laughing through her tears. Yes, please, let's warm up. Daniel smiled faintly. I'll make it, he offered. Emily arched an eyebrow. You make coffee? You used to burn toast, he chuckled. I've learned a few things in the last 2 years. Noah grinned. Let's see if you've really changed, Dad. The laughter that followed was soft but real, fragile, hesitant, and yet, for the first time in years, it filled the house with something other than emptiness. As Daniel busied himself in the kitchen, Emily sat on the couch, staring at the locket resting in her palm. She could still hear his voice from that beach trip years ago. No matter what happens, you're my always. Had he meant it then, or was that promise just another casualty of time and fear? Daniel returned with 3 steaming mugs, setting one gently in front of her. Still take it with a splash of vanilla, he asked. She blinked, surprised. You remembered. He smiled faintly. I never forgot anything about you, Emily. Not one thing. Something inside her chest shifted, a warmth, a flicker of the old tenderness that she thought had died long ago. She looked away, afraid her face would reveal too much. Noah sat beside her, sipping quietly, eyes darting between his parents. He didn't say a word, but his heart swelled. This was what he'd hoped for. Not perfection, just connection. After a while, Daniel spoke again. You know, when I was recovering after surgery, I started writing letters to you and Noah. Dozens of them. I never mailed them, but I kept every one. Emily looked up. Letters. He nodded. They were my way of talking to you when I didn't have the right to. Her throat tightened. Do you still have them? Yes, he said quietly. In my truck. I was going to leave them at your door if you didn't want to see me tonight. Emily's voice dropped to a whisper. Can I read them? Daniel hesitated, then reached into his coat and pulled out a worn envelope, thick and creased. I brought a few with me, he said. You don't have to read them now, but they're yours. She took the envelope carefully, her fingers brushing his. The touch was brief, accidental, yet it sent a ripple of emotion through both of them. I'll read them, she said softly. Just, not tonight. He nodded. Whenever you're ready. Noah looked at the two of them, then smiled quietly. You know, for a family that's been through so much, this doesn't feel like an ending. Emily turned to him, her eyes warm. Maybe it's not. Daniel's gaze softened. Maybe it's just the start of a different kind of story. Outside, the snow had stopped falling. The world beyond the window was still a clean, untouched white stretching into the quiet night. Emily looked out at it, then back at Daniel. It's late, she said softly. You should stay the night. The roads will be icy. Daniel froze, surprised. Are you sure? She nodded slowly. You can take the guest room. It's warmer than your truck. A smile tugged at his lips, small, grateful, full of meaning. Thank you. Emily turned off the last candle, leaving just the glow of the Christmas lights in the corner. She lingered by the stairs, holding the locket close to her chest. Good night, Daniel, she said softly. He met her eyes. Good night, Em. As she climbed the stairs, she could feel his gaze following her, not out of longing, but of quiet gratitude. And though she didn't want to admit it, a small part of her heart whispered something she hadn't dared to feel in years. Maybe love doesn't end. Maybe it just waits for you to believe in it again. The next morning arrived softly, wrapped in pale winter sunlight. Snow covered the yard in a perfect white blanket, glistening like diamonds under the dawn. The house was still except for the faint sound of a coffee pot brewing and the low hum of quiet thoughts. Emily woke before Noah. She stood by her bedroom window, looking down at the driveway where Daniel's truck sat, dusted with snow. She hadn't slept much. Her mind replayed every word from the night before. His confession, the truth, the locket, the years they'd both spent in silence. On her dresser sat the thick envelope he had given her. She reached for it slowly, her fingers brushing over his handwriting, familiar yet aged. It said simply, to Emily. When you're ready. She hesitated for a moment, then opened it. Inside were several folded pages, each with Daniel's neat, slanted writing. The first letter began with the words, If you're reading this, it means I've found the courage I once lacked. Emily sat down on the edge of her bed and began to read. There's no day that passes without me seeing your face in everything I do. I remember how you laughed at my terrible coffee, how you'd fall asleep reading beside me, how you'd hum when you cooked. I remember the sound of Noah's footsteps running down the hall. That sound still lives in my head. The sound of a home I lost because of my own fear. I left thinking I was sparing you pain, but all I did was give it a permanent home in both our hearts. Her eyes blurred. She blinked the tears away, but they kept coming. If I could turn back time, I'd do one thing differently. I'd stay. Not because it would be easy, but because you were worth the storm. You always were. Emily pressed the page to her chest, overwhelmed by the honesty of the man she'd once loved. The man she thought she'd lost forever. She read the second letter. Noah turned 17 last week. I didn't call. I wanted to, but I didn't know if he'd answer. I imagine him taller now, with your calm and my temper. I hope he knows how proud I am, not for what he does, but for who he's become. I hope he forgives me someday. A soft knock pulled her out of the words. She looked up to see Noah standing at her door, hair messy, eyes sleepy. You're up early, he said. She smiled faintly, wiping her eyes. Couldn't sleep? He noticed the letters in her hands. You're reading them? Yes, she said quietly. They're hard, but beautiful. Noah stepped into the room, sitting beside her. He's not the same, Mom. Last night, I saw it. He's scared, but he's trying. Emily nodded, her voice trembling. I know. I can see that too. Downstairs, they heard the faint sound of someone moving around. Daniel. Noah stood. I'll go help him with breakfast. Emily smiled softly. Tell him to make sure he doesn't burn anything. When Noah left, she picked up the last page from the envelope. It was shorter than the others, almost hesitant. If I ever stand in front of you again, I'll say the words I should have said before I left. Not I'm sorry, because that will never be enough, but thank you. Thank you for carrying the love I abandoned. For raising our son, for surviving me. You were the home I was too lost to stay in. She closed the letter, tears sliding down her cheeks silently. She sat there for a long time, letting the emotions settle, until the smell of pancakes drifted through the air. Warm, familiar, nostalgic. When she finally went downstairs, she paused at the kitchen doorway. Daniel was there, wearing one of Noah's aprons that said Master of Pancakes. He looked both out of place and perfectly right at the same time. Noah was laughing, trying to guide him through flipping the pancakes without burning them. For a moment, Emily just watched the two of them together, laughing like they hadn't in years. It felt like a scene stolen from a time long gone. When Daniel noticed her, he froze, spatula in hand. Morning, he said softly. Morning, she replied. Her voice carried warmth, not distance. He smiled. Coffee's ready. Pancakes might be edible. No promises. She chuckled lightly. That's already an improvement. They all sat together at the table, the sunlight spilling across their faces. For a while, they just talked about small things, safe things. It felt almost ordinary, and yet the simplicity was what made it so precious. After breakfast, Noah went outside to shovel the snow, leaving Emily and Daniel alone in the kitchen. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was filled with unspoken things, years of them. Daniel finally broke it. I didn't think you'd read the letters so soon. I did, she said quietly, and they hurt, but they also healed something I didn't realize was still broken. He met her eyes, his own filled with quiet emotion. I wrote them hoping one day you'd understand that leaving you wasn't the end of my love. It was the worst mistake of it. Emily exhaled slowly. You said something in one of the letters about thanking me. He nodded. I meant it. She took a breath, her voice trembling but strong. Then maybe I should thank you too. He frowned softly. For what? For reminding me that love doesn't disappear, it just changes form. It hurts, it fades, it hides, but if it's real, it always finds its way back. Daniel looked down, fighting emotion. Emily, she shook her head gently. I'm not saying I'm ready to start over. I'm saying, I see you, and I'm no longer angry. He swallowed hard. That's more than I deserve. Maybe, she said softly, but maybe forgiveness isn't about what you deserve, it's about freeing both of us. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. The silence felt like a deep exhale after years of holding one's breath. Outside, Noah's laughter drifted through the window as he tossed snow into the air. Daniel smiled faintly. He's happy. That's what matters most. Emily nodded. He is, because he finally has both of us, even if it's just in the same room again. Daniel took a slow breath. Emily, would you let me take you and Noah to dinner tonight? Just dinner. No expectations. She hesitated, searching his face. Why? He smiled softly. Because I want to make a new memory, one that isn't about regret. Her lips curved into a faint, thoughtful smile. We'll see. And for the first time in years, Daniel felt something unfamiliar. Hope that didn't hurt, as Emily turned away. The sunlight caught the locket around her neck, glinting gently. She hadn't taken it off, and Daniel noticed. That evening, the snow had settled into a soft white glow beneath the streetlights. The town looked peaceful, quiet, as if holding its breath. Emily stood by her bedroom mirror, adjusting the silver locket resting against her collarbone. She hadn't worn it in years, and now it felt like both a memory and a promise. Downstairs, she could hear Noah laughing. Daniel's deeper voice followed, hesitant but light, as if he was remembering what it felt like to belong somewhere again. For a moment, Emily closed her eyes and let the sound wash over her. It was strange, she thought. Life could break you and still find a way to surprise you with softness. When she came downstairs, Daniel was waiting by the door, wearing a dark coat and that familiar nervous smile she hadn't seen in a decade. You ready? He asked quietly. She nodded. I guess I am. Noah grabbed his gloves. Don't forget, I'm coming too, he said, grinning. You two aren't sneaking off on some dramatic dinner alone. Daniel chuckled. Wouldn't dream of it, son. The three of them drove to a small restaurant on the edge of town, a cozy place with warm lights and old wooden booths. It wasn't fancy, but it was quiet, intimate, the kind of place where memories liked to linger. When they stepped inside, a wave of warmth and the scent of baked bread greeted them. The hostess smiled. Table for 3. Daniel nodded. Yes, reservation for Carter. Emily glanced at him. You made a reservation. He smiled softly. I wasn't taking chances this time. As they settled into their booth, the glow of candlelight flickered between them. Conversation started slow, small talk, little jokes. But soon, the heaviness that once existed between them began to melt away. For the first time in years, they laughed together. Noah told stories from school, teasing both of them. Daniel shared a few embarrassing memories from when Noah was little. And even Emily found herself laughing until her cheeks ached. There was no bitterness, no regret, just 3 people rediscovering the sound of home. When the food came, Daniel grew quiet. He glanced between them, his son, his once wife, and cleared his throat. Can I say something? Emily nodded gently. Go ahead. He looked down for a moment, gathering courage. When I left, I thought I'd made peace with my choice. I told myself it was better for you both. But sitting here now, I realize something I wish I'd known then. Emily tilted her head slightly. What's that? Daniel's eyes lifted to meet hers. Steady, full of truth. Peace doesn't come from running away. It comes from the people who wait for you, even when they have every reason not to. Her chest tightened. His words hit something deep inside her, the quiet, unspoken truth she'd carried for years. He continued softly. You waited for me in ways you'll never admit. You kept our son strong, kept this family alive even when I wasn't part of it. I don't deserve your forgiveness, Emily, but I needed you to know that loving you was the best part of my life, even when I failed to show it. Emily's eyes glistened. Daniel, I don't know if I can ever forget the hurt, but I can see that you've changed, and maybe that's enough for now. He nodded slowly, relief mixing with sadness. That's all I hoped for. Noah watched them quietly, his heart full. He'd wanted this moment, not for fairy tale endings, but for peace, for his parents to finally see that love, in all its imperfect forms, was still alive. Emily took a sip of her coffee, then said softly, You know what's funny? When you left, I told myself I'd never love again, but somewhere, deep down, I think a small part of me kept waiting, not for you, but for the man I hoped you'd become. Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. And am I that man now? She looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled, a small, forgiving, beautiful smile. You're on your way. For a moment, the world outside the window faded, the snow, the lights, the noise, and all that remained was the quiet heartbeat of something real. After dinner, they stepped out into the cold night. The snow had stopped, and the stars glittered above them like scattered glass. Noah ran ahead to the car, laughing as his breath turned into clouds. Daniel and Emily walked slowly behind him, side by side. Neither spoke at first. Their footsteps crunched softly in rhythm. Finally, Daniel said, Do you ever wonder what life would have been like if I hadn't left? Emily smiled gently. I used to, but now I think, maybe we both needed the time apart to learn how to find each other again. He stopped, turning to face her. Does that mean I still have a place in your life? She looked up at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in years, she saw not the man who left, but the man who came back. Yes, she said softly, but this time, it's not about fixing the past. It's about building something new, something honest. A tear slipped down Daniel's cheek before he could stop it. He smiled through it. I'll take that chance. They reached the car, where Noah was waiting, pretending not to watch them. Emily opened her door, then turned back to Daniel one last time. You know, she said quietly, you gave me a gift tonight. He frowned softly. What gift? Closure, she whispered. And maybe, the start of forgiveness. Daniel nodded slowly. Then maybe your son was right. Maybe love doesn't end, it just waits. She smiled, a smile full of peace, tenderness, and quiet strength. Yes, it waits. For everyone to finally come home. As they drove away, the radio played softly, a slow, nostalgic tune that filled the silence perfectly. Emily looked out at the snow-covered streets, her hand gently touching the locket at her neck. Inside that locket was a picture of what once was, but tonight, she didn't see it as a reminder of loss. She saw it as a promise of second chances, and in that small car, under the quiet snowfall, something beautiful happened. The past didn't vanish, it simply found its place beside the present. For the first time in years, Emily's heart was calm. Her son had waited until everyone left, and in doing so, he gave her back her life. The end.